down at the, let's see, right here. All of it is good. A matter of fact, let's read it all. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. That's that hedge you hear me talking about continually, right? That hedge. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Most High, Ahiah, he is my refuge, my fortress, my God, and in him will I trust. Surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler, and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust. This trust shall be thy shield and buckler. Only God can shield us or protect us through and from what's to come. 5. Thou shalt not be afraid of the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day. Talking about the missiles, weaponry, all the evil death devices Satan hath created to kill off mankind. Nor the pestilences that walk in darkness. Nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come near thee. Let's emphasize, and let's really drill down on this 7th verse, because I believe this is exactly where we are right now. People falling on either side, but yet those who are under the hedge of Christ understand what's going on and and is being directed through this. And I know it's our God, the God of Israel, who is sending the angels to navigate us through this by first giving us the true understanding to what's going on. All right, and that leads us to our discussion today. Our discussion today. That something was cut loose in the earth. A celebration that would lead, that the evil Masonic order would bring forth. Okay? I'm going to tell you right now, an initial satanic ritual to celebrate the reconstruction, technological construction of the very new enhanced Tower of Babel.
Y'all better pay attention.
Let's go through it. Let's go through it real quick. I just showed this, but I have much more to show. Starting with, a lot of you don't know this. Okay, this is just fact. I'm not going to, out there, I'm not just going to give my opinion on something. This is fact. For those who don't know, some people have come in after 2020, but you don't realize that there was an exercise called Event 201, a global pandemic exercise.
I bet y'all say, oh, do the
in
greeting.
the fall of 2000.
I ate all day.
2019.
Now I'm on my study.
A few
Trying to get in this lesson real quick.
The coronavirus.
About to let y'all check out what we got going on.
March of 2020. What was that event? What were these exercises for? Well, let's see.
This is to the
Now,
elders.
this was before they told people to stay in their homes and wear masks.
They're bringing out that real stuff.
It began
All
in
help the food, though.
healthy-looking pigs months,
Check it out.
perhaps years ago. A new coronavirus spread silently within herds. Gradually, farmers started getting sick. Infected people got a respiratory illness with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia.
Now, mind you, folks, this was an exercise done 2001 before we knew anything about something getting launched that would bring the whole world on a lockstep campaign against a sickness. This is 2019, what you're seeing right here.
The sickest required intensive care. Many died. Experts agree, unless it is quickly controlled, it could lead to a severe pandemic. an outbreak that circles the globe and affects people everywhere.
The mission of the Pandemic Emergency Board is to provide.
That's right. Under the Johns Hopkins Society and Bill and Melinda Gates Society, this was financed as a test run. A pandemic emergency board has been
Fair use, by the way.
convened to respond to the CAPS pandemic. This is 2019. I cannot emphasize this enough.
Provide recommendations to deal with the major global challenges arising in response to an unfolding pandemic. The board is comprised of highly experienced leaders from business, public health, and civil society.
We could be looking at double the number of cases in 1 week and 16 times as many in a month if we are not able to stop the spread. That would be on the order of 500,000 cases, and it would continue to rise exponentially. In 3 months, we could be approaching 10 million cases.
We're at the start of what's looking like it will be a severe pandemic. And there are problems emerging that can only be solved by global business and governments working together.
Working together. Now, mind you, folks, some would think, looking at this, that what you're witnessing is the media rollout that we were seeing in 2020. No, this was the exercise months before it was rolled out. An exercise we had amongst all of the corporations, 2019. Now, this is what they simulated people would be witnessing as far as news in 2020.
We have known about CAPS-like viruses in animals and people for decades, but have not been successful at developing a licensed vaccine. And sure, there are new technologies that may help, but it's going to be difficult.
Right out of the gate, they got a black man simulating a solution as an immunologist. Okay? Out the gate, they're already talking about a jab in the simulation.
I am not optimistic about having a vaccine in time to be relevant during this pandemic.
So the policy crisis in question for this board in this meeting is this. How should governments, business, and international organizations allocate and distribute pandemic antivirals and medical supplies to the people who need the most?
What we've seen work
To the people who need it the most, and it so happens to be, at the end of it, it
Don't call
was
black
talking
folk.
about us getting it first. Poor people, black people.
very well in the HIV field.
And again, folks, this was just an exercise. There was no announcement of anything to come or anything when they did this exercise. They already had each point of this particular crisis worked out amongst corporations, doctors, governments, everything.
In fact, procurement through the Global Fund. So having a centralized mechanism, so financially able to procure on behalf of affected countries is pretty critical. I think the second thing is it's going to be very important that for the business sector, for manufacturers of antivirals, that we have clarity around what the need is and where the need is and who are making the decisions.
I think that given that the countries most affected are those that are low and middle income countries with unequal access to technology, to finances, the UN has a worldwide footprint, universally recognized, and universal membership.
A global stockpile would certainly help ensure more rational and strategic allocation, but the reality is that we don't have the logistics capability, even within the UN, to bring that together in one place and run it. So this is where I think a collaboration between the international organizations like the World Health Organization and the private sector, which runs these supply chains for many purposes every day, understand where the supplies are, make smart decisions about how to allocate them to the people who need them in the places that need them the most, and then work with the industry to move those supplies from where they are today to where they need to be.
Just to underscore the point that cooperation among supply chain providers or
That's the UPS Foundation, folks. You got it. Those who deliver goods. They were there too.
Businesses that have huge supply chains can add a lot of efficiency to the whole process.
The question is, can you, through this international mechanism, really promote commitments to doing this?
The former U.S. Deputy National Security Advisor is there too.
Just quickly
Now, mind you, folks, this was before there was any such thing as a pandemic.
possible and give people a sense that actually if they contribute more, that they will have a better chance of protecting their own populations and their country's security and health.
So to be completely clear, most of this production would already be committed in contracts.
Yes.
It is almost unheard of that people are producing product without having a forward commitment for the consumption of that product. So the first thing needs to be done, because this is not something that the countries currently control, unless countries are going to bring about emergency situations and co-opt an existing supply chain.
I think it's not likely. I agree that countries are not going to buy a countermeasure to put into a global supply without retaining a large portion of it for themselves.
Public health agencies have issued travel advisories, while some countries have banned travel from the worst affected areas. As a result, the travel sector is taking a huge hit. Travel bookings are down 45%, and many flights have been canceled. A ripple effect is racing through the service sector. Governments that rely on travel and tourism as a large part of their economies are being hit particularly hard.
How should national leaders, businesses, and international organizations balance the risk of worsening disease that would be caused by the continued movement of people around the world against the risks of profound economic consequence of travel and trade bans?
If there's some sense that there's a UN institution that can do all of this, then I worry we're suffering from a delusional disorder on the power of the UN. It's really important to get those industries and their trade associations and an efficient leadership established, which is decentralized, but has a collective responsibility and accountability. And that needs to be supported by the public leadership.
What is essential, what is non-essential travel, we have to clarify this. Otherwise, if we go down to 20% bookings over a long period, the company will run down. That's a fact.
You know, there's a whole complex set of issues in a highly interdependent world on supply chains that are just in time. We need to think about how much flex there is in that just-in-time supply chain system and make sure it keeps running. I think it's going to take specificity, and it's going to take knowledge that only the private sector has. The UN can play an important coordinating facilitation role, but the companies know where those commodities are, where they move, how to move them, and that's where a type of public-private collaboration that we have not generally had in these crises needs to be put together pretty quickly.
We are not out of money yet, but the fact is we are trending in a dangerous direction and something needs to change.
So the policy question for this board.
They also plan for the pandemic causing a global financial crisis.
Now is how should financial resources be prioritized? Are there nodes that we cannot allow to fail? What is your sense of priorities? We don't have money to pay for all of these.
Now, these people usually come together for cancer research and all these other things. Same people. They usually come together. John Hopkins Society usually comes together for cancer research and all that. What do they have to do with planning in case of a pandemic?
Urgent problems.
So at the moment, we want the fund, right? You need the money.
The CDC, China CDC, was also at the simulation. So I don't know. Maybe it was a coincidence that the disease would come out of Wuhan, China. Well, they were there for the simulation.
So where's the money? So the government can supply some money. A lot of, private sectors, some are sitting here, you have some money. But now you need a really coordinated, centralized efforts.
Hotels will be experiencing, crippling losses doing that. And we know that the hotel business in itself.
Marriott International
makes up 5% of the GDP.
Governments need to be willing to do things that are out of their historical perspective, or for the most part, it's really a war footing that we need to be on.
We shouldn't underestimate the power of entrepreneurship. We need to escalate that, whether it's through, the government's helping with tax breaks or, subsidies of that nature to increase manufacturing of those types of products. It can happen quickly. A Marshall-type plan, don't mean to say that exactly, but a Marshall plan.
A Marshall-type plan.
Martial law.
A Marshall-type plan. We got to shut things down and get the Army involved.
They can go into effect, can stimulate change very quickly.
Countries are reacting in different ways as to how best to manage the overwhelming amounts of dis and misinformation circulating over the internet. In some cases, limited internet shutdowns are being implemented to quell panic.
How much control of information should there be, and by whom? And how can false information be effectively challenged? And what if that false information is coming from companies or from governments?
I think it's very important that we make sure that there is concise communication with all healthcare facilities where these patients are being treated so that there isn't mass panic.
We're at a moment where...
Make sure all hospitals are on accord.
The social media platforms have to...
So there isn't mass panic. Don't forget about that,
Elder. Technology platform and not a broadcaster is over. They, in fact, have to be a participant in broadcasting accurate information and partnering with the scientific and health communities to counterweight.
Now, I'm not going to watch the whole thing. Matter of fact, it's only 2 more minutes. Let's see it all the way through.
Of accurate information, because to put the genie back in the bottle of the misinformation and disinformation is nigh impossible.
One thing we haven't spoken about, and I'm wondering whether it's time to talk about this, is a step up from the part of the governments on enforcement actions against fake news.
I personally do not believe that trying to shut things down in terms of information is either practical or desirable. And we do have, I think, a couple of strategies that are available to us, one of which is the flood strategy, second of which is relying and informing and equipping trusted sources of information with the facts so they can then pass that on. But we also need to actually think about a technological answer to this.
Scenario epilogue.
The outcome of the CAPS pandemic in Event 201 was catastrophic. 65 million people died in the first 18 months. The outbreak was small at first and initially seemed controllable, but then it started spreading in densely crowded and impoverished neighborhoods of megacities. From that point on, the spread of the disease was explosive. Within 6 months, cases were occurring in nearly every country. The global economy was in a free fall. The GDP down 11%. Stock markets around the world plummeted between 20 and 40% and headed into a downward cycle of fear and low expectation. Businesses were not borrowing, banks were not lending. Everyone was just hoping to hunker down and weather the storm. Economists say the economic turmoil caused by such a pandemic will last for years, perhaps a decade. The societal impacts, the loss of faith in government, the distrust of news, and the breakdown of social cohesion could last even longer. We have to ask, did this need to be so bad? Are there things we could have done in the 5 to 10 years leading up to the pandemic that would have lessened the catastrophic consequences? We believe the answer is yes. So, are we as a global community now finally ready to do the hard work needed to prepare for the next pandemic?
Now, right after this, brothers and sisters, right after this, it all broke out in 2020 where it led to people actually getting something injected in them, right? Eventually, what would happen? They would have some type of, in the midst of this, at the end of it, now that the whole world is involved, on board, after all of these deaths, something happens in Birmingham. England.
So folks, pay close attention. You're going to want to go look this up. And I give the full details completely documented in the second edition of the Antichrist and Cup of Tea. Here it is, July 28th, at the Commonwealth Games, the 22nd Commonwealth Games for 2022. We have these every few years. They've been going on the whole time. The Queen Elizabeth II was queen. It's the largest set of international games in the world after the Olympics. And this year they had 72 nations and territories participating. Roughly, they estimate almost a third of the world's population potentially watching. Okay, the whole British Commonwealth. At this event, Prince Charles opened it in lieu of the Queen on her behalf. He oversaw the whole thing. He was there in person at the Alexander Stadium in Birmingham, England. Okay? At that event, a giant Molech bull, 10 meters in height, was rolled out into the center of the stadium to be worshipped and to face a large, recreated, rebuilt, right there in front of everybody, mock Tower of Babel with shards in it, and it begins with a star exploding in our solar system. That's how they introduced this. A lot of CGI initially. They portray a star outside our solar system, or maybe deep in our solar system, blowing up past Saturn. And it explodes a bright star like Lucifer. That's what it is, exploding. And its shards fly through our solar system, and they reach Earth. And they land in all the nations of the Commonwealth. And these 72 quote-unquote dreamers, New Agers, find these shards outside their homes. They retrieve them. The first person to do so is named Stella. She picks it up. It's lit. It's brightly lit. It's like a large quartz crystal. It's bright white, lit as bright white, like an interior light, as it were, bright white. She picks this thing up and she prays to it, whispers to it and prays to it. Then she takes this back to her home. All these others, these 72 dreamers, there's 72 of them total, including her, pick their shards up and they take them to their homes. As soon as they do, there are anti-gravity effects in their homes. Things start to float in the air, and then their homes are lifted up off the ground with these people in them, and they float across the Commonwealth from other nations and across the UK, across seas and oceans and lakes and forests and so forth to Birmingham, England, to be over the stadium.
Look at that.
All these homes floating over the stadium, and then they land. And the dreamers exit them in front of the audience.
The dreamers exit. Look.
And they have the shards in hand. The bull then comes onto the stadium, pulled by slave women.
The women are now pulling the beast system. Come on.
The bull, they portray this, rebels and detaches from the chains. And these female slaves who've been driven by somebody who's kind of like a Roman, a demon, whatever. It didn't quite look like a Roman, are freed, right? So now the bull and these women are freed and they pretend they're afraid of each other. And the bull goes on to the center of the stadium, and these quote-unquote dreamers, these New Agers, encircle the thing. But initially, before they do that, Stella comes with her crystal. She and 5 others, there's 6 of them, 6 of the dreamers, apart from these slavish women who are behind now on the bull, the either side of it as it's moving, kind of charging actually, into the center of the stadium, okay, from the track from just outside where it's entered, now detached from its chain, no longer restrained, okay? Charges into the center of the stadium, Stella wanting to appease this thing so that they're not killed by this Molech.
Look at this.
Goes with this New Age crystal, approaches it slowly with these 5 other dreamers. She's got the crystal in her left hand, and then she puts her hand up to the nose of the bull, and it bows down so that she can touch its nose with the crystal in her hand. She's the only one holding her crystal at that point. And the bull is, at least at that moment, appeased. And there's a whole backstory to this, and they say
worshiping the beast,
things to the audience, about peace, love, friendship, yada yada, conflict resolves.
And there's more. Let me go here.
Yada yada, and rides it as the woman riding the beast. And there are then 71 dreamers encircling it. And they're bowing down to this thing, worshiping it, and literally doing a New Age worship ceremony with their crystals before this thing, and inviting the whole Commonwealth
And women are actually pulling the beast because everything have segued into women businesses, where it's them, actually women more so, fueling the beast economy through consumerism as well as entrepreneurship, right?
To join them in this worship. And who's overseeing all of this? Prince Charles. And then the woman's riding the beast, right? And as we get toward the end of the ceremony, and there are a bunch of songs, by the way, that are accommodating this with significant lyrics, okay? And I won't go into that, but it's all documented in the book. At the end, as it's getting dark.
Which book is this?
The flags at the base of this thing.
Look at this.
So it's rising up on its front feet, okay? And it's encircled by the flags of all these nations, the 72. They've literally placed their flags at the base of this thing.
They're doing this in plain sight.
They're not just worshiping it with their crystals and all the rest. And
look at this.
Not just being ridden by Stella, you know, the woman riding the beast. Now the tower is rising again before this beast. It's been built. And all the nations, by the way, their names have gone across this tower already, at this point been displayed on its surface. At the top of this tower, I told you those shards came down earlier from the heavens. This blown up Luciferian star, representing the devil, reaching the earth, falling to the earth. The devil falling to the earth, okay? And being taken up by these New Agers. So they all approach, they leave the bowl now, but the flags are at the base of the bowl, showing the nations are all worshiping around this bowl of 71. And I'm going to come back to the number 71. It's extremely significant. But at any rate, they all come to the base of this tower with their shards in hand, and they stick them into the side of the tower, and they ascend visibly through the tower. And as they get toward the top of the tower, they form this ball, the original star that blew up, reconstituted, and then it rises above the tower.
It's showing that they have reconstructed what Nimrod couldn't. Folks, this is a prop for the original Tower of Babel. They have assumed what Nimrod couldn't finish. That's right. The technology to go into the heavens for the Battle of Armageddon.
And you get this huge disco-like ball atop the tower that's lit up very brightly, and a beam of light goes between that ball and the chest of the ball. Now, it's nighttime at this point in Alexander Stadium, an open-air stadium, so you can see these lights. But they're portraying the rebuilding of the Tower of Babel in our day, with Lucifer being over it, being worshipped by all the nations of the world. And why do I say all? I said that the 72 dreamers were for the 72, they're for the 72 nations and territories of the British Company.
The gods who fell, 70, who separated the Tower of Babel. They're worshiping these. They say 72, but one on the outside of it is Israel, who will not worship the beast, who was severed out from amongst all nations.
Right, which is
as God.
The southern kingdom and the northern kingdom.
We're always worshiping the beast. So they're celebrating our people now as a part of this satanic pagan worship. Now, why are they celebrating in 2022? Well, because those who believe, who could oppose them, fell for the first campaign. And now, based on those numbers of believers who fell for the campaign and got the stuff in them,
the Jews,
they know that there will not be what? That much resistance
the vaccine,
from those who believe,
just to be
because
clear,
these people,
for those who don't understand.
Gone. So that leads us to what? The new event. They have a new event now, knowing that there will be what? Less opposition. Fair use. Fair use. Why is there less opposition? Because the majority of people who fell for the first campaign will not be here.
They're dead and gone.
They've already got a simulation to explain off why so many people are dying that have actually taken the stuff. They've already got an explanation. When there's people dying in number by 2025, they're only going to say, that's right, it's because of the new pandemic. They already have this in place to explain how many people they know will die because they listened the first time. Fair use. Contagion 2025.
Officials in 2 Latin American countries alerted the WHO of several outbreaks of a new infectious disease that's mysteriously appearing across the region. Severe Epidemic Enterovirus Respiratory Syndrome 2025. Over the past 6 weeks alone, there have been 500 confirmed or suspected cases reported. The virus could cause a severe pandemic if early containment and mitigation efforts are not successful.
This is a fictional scenario, folks. The same thing that was done in 2019, they've just made another one, the Johns Hopkins Society.
The pandemic in this type of situation and trend would be a risk for the global health security.
Now notice, folks, how many of the other nations, Asians, East Indians, white people were in the first, that was in the first, what we would call simulation. That was in the first simulation, Event 201. Now look how many representations on the panel that are black people. Look how now we're overrepresented in the next simulation, giving us an insight to the people or the countries they'll be targeting.
Pandemics are inherently political, financial, and so much broader.
We have not spoken on the leadership in the country. And I think that we need to be also very careful. We cannot decide a lot of things without the leaders be involved and agree on that.
There is no substitute for national leadership.
It's important to support the local response or the national response.
Training those that are in these areas first, enabling them with the tools, protecting them, and if needs be, regional solidarity first.
At this stage, communication is key, and communication should include not just scientists with data, but also social, religious, and political leaders.
Trust. This is an essential issue, and trust was broken among countries, between populations and healthcare systems, between healthcare systems and governments.
I'm very sorry to say that in 2025, we need to strengthen the health system.
WHO needs to be a voice for the voiceless.
No one is safe until all of us are safe.
As of today, there have been an estimated 1 billion cases worldwide, with more than 20 million deaths, including nearly 15 million children.
20 million deaths, 15 million children. How would they know this? Well, people actually fell for it, and now they have calculated how many that they would say has died. See, they don't leave anything to chance. They know exactly how many will die. And they're going to, when all this happened at once, they're going to claim it's what they've rolled out. And for those who are not dead,
countless millions are alive but left with paralysis.
For those who are not dead, they're paralyzed. I have a brother right now who didn't listen. This guy would walk and do whatever he wanted to do at first before 2020, and he was the one who didn't listen. He cannot even walk right now without assistance because he went, without us knowing, into the Walmart and other places and went and got him over and over again without telling me. They say the people who live will be, those children who lived were paralyzed. They couldn't walk.
Or brain damage.
Or had brain damage.
Most successful countries are those which invested in preparedness and trained for this moment years in advance. This included having full-time pandemic preparedness and response teams, which conducted detailed operational planning and routinely tested those plans through exercises and drills. If more countries had participated and heeded the guidance, the toll might have been much less.
So they said, so what they're going to say is, because countries who didn't listen, things spread it and people died, and the numbers were of biblical proportion. What countries are they going to claim? They're going to claim only 12% of Africa participated and didn't get the stuff in them, and that's why we're under a new emergency. 2025, blaming Africa. So that tells me, I don't know, let's see, will the next so-called scare that they came from Wuhan, China, be from Africa the next time? Here we go. Everything they said during the simulation of 2019 came to pass. Event 201. It happened exactly how they said it would. And the people did exactly, through fear, what John Hopkins and Belinda Gates Foundations knew they would do. Through fear, they would go out and do what? Comply to the solution. Now that you have the solution in you, they can now calculate just how many people are going to fall. It's going to affect billions. And millions will die. And now they have a built-in excuse, a new event. This is why the people are dying. It's not that they listened the first time. With that, open up the lines 515-605-9327, because what we're witnessing here on everything put together
and with that,
is an outright upfront
gotta go.
in plain sight